Good morning. Today is a very exciting day, besides the fact that it's the 13th of Kislev, which in Chabad is a very special day related to the Rebbe. It's also the day that we will, God willing, finish about 6.5 years of study of the first part of Tanya Likutei Amarim, and it's quite an accomplishment. I did not think we'd get this far. It's not always that we can have a class continue. It's like a lot of resolutions we make start and don't always pan out. This one, Baruch Hashem, did. So we're on the last page of Tanya, actually the second to last page, the last line. We'll go back just a bit. And we're going to address now, at this point in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe goes back to that which he began earlier in Tanya. In Tanya, the Alter Rebbe explained and discussed the godly soul and the animal soul, and he got into a whole discussion of the importance of doing physical mitzvahs. And he asked a question in chapter 35. Why are physical mitzvahs so important? Why do you have to physically do the mitzvah? And seemingly what? God is so to speak, spirituality is so weak that the only way we can succeed is by tapping into the material. I mean, come on, we're a little bit better than that, seemingly. Spirituality should be able to succeed without catching on or benefiting or riding on the shoulders of material stuff. Material things are klippa. Gashmias is concealment. It's dishonesty. It's not true essence of, it's not godliness revealed, it's godliness concealed. So why do we have to have that a mitzvah specifically done with a physical esrog and a physical candle and a physical tefillin and everything physical and material? The answer that we gave in the subsequent chapters basically explained that true for the godly soul, it's not needed, but to draw down the Shechina and to draw down godliness, even into the lowest realms, even that the animal soul should benefit, even at the material world, we use the word dir b'tachtonim to make God's dwelling place down here. It's needed to bring down the Shechina even lower into the material world. The Alter Rebbe here is now going to say something absolutely novel, what we call in Hebrew a chidush, something fascinating, which is not the standard way to see things. And he's basically going to say, not only is the benefit of material being engaged important for the animal soul, the godly soul can't function. The godly soul can't do its job with only spiritual. And it's an exciting and fascinating point the Alter Rebbe is going to make. We'll start in the last line on page 148. He says, this is about the young boy, the orphan, the child of Rav Hamanuna, this brilliant young boy, this spiritual giant. It said, this, we said, with the statement we had in chapter 35 that we started talking about, this was that there's the godly light that rests upon the Shechina, upon the head of a person. Because King Solomon, Shlomo Melech, said that Chacham einav bereishai, a wise man has his eyes in his head. And we said, where does everyone else have their eyes? That was a discussion, their elbow. I mean, where is it? The bump into things. So we said, obviously, and we explained originally that it means that the person who is a chacham looks ahead. He looks to see what's going to happen. What's the results of my staying up late? What's the result of my investment in a mitzvah? This Yenuka gave an insight that's phenomenal. He said, chacham einav bereishai means his eyes are on his head. I mean, he's all focused on the Shechina. On your head doesn't mean your eyes are in your head. It means your eyes are on your head. You're looking, you're watching your head, and you're seeing the Shechina that rests on top of you. And then Yenuka explains, and it's mishcha, it needs the oil. And he explained like this, that the person is like a candle. The candle has the oil, it has the wick, and it has the flame. He says the candle and the wick and the flame is the composite of the person. So earlier we said that what's the flame, what's the wick? The wick we said was Torah, learning Torah is the wick. Now we're going to say something phenomenal. He says, L'slabash b'chachma, it's to engage, meaning the Shechina has to live and enclose itself in Chachma. And if you remember, Chachma, we said, was the vessel, the vehicle that brought the Shechina down to this world. The Shechina came down almost like in a carriage sitting in the Torah, and it came down. That's how we engage Shechina from world to world in the Torah. He says, Anik Hashem and Mishchas Kodesh, that is called the oil of anointed, the holy oil, like it says in Zehar. And what does Zehar say? V'inun uvdin tavin. That refers to the 613 commandments. That what's the oil? The oil, he's not saying here is a Torah alone, it's a 630 commandments. That means, how does one have the oil for the soul? Because think about a candle for a second. You have the flame, You have the wick and you have the oil. The oil is what keeps the flame burning. The wick, as we'll see in a moment, is very important, but has a particular job. We'll get to the wick in a minute. The oil is what keeps the flame. How long will the fire burn? How much oil do you have? Oil, he says, is physical actions, putting on tefillin, doing a mitzvah, taking a Shabbos candle, going and making a bracha on matzah, eating matzah. That's the oil. He's saying in the physical engagement is what keeps the Shechina al Reisha on your head. Which this Torah, this mitzvah, this commandment comes down from the Chachma. It's to let the fire hold on to the wick. And the Alter Rebbe is going to say something really amazing here. What is the wick? He says the wick here refers to your animal soul, your body and your animal soul. Hello, Talia. The wick refers to your animal and your animal soul and your body. He says it refers to the animal soul, but he uses an interesting expression. The animal soul has a couple different ways we can call it. We can call it nefesh hativis, nefesh habahamis, nefesh hachyonis. Nefesh habahamis means the animal, the ego self. I care, I'm hungry, I want to eat, I want to sleep, I want attention, I want people to notice me, appreciate me. Nefesh hativis is the natural things that, for example, the ability to see and hear and the senses, the natural function. Hachyonis is the vitality. That's what gives you life. It allows your blood to pump, allows you to breathe, and gives you basically life. The fact that you have life, that comes from not a different soul, but one aspect. The animal soul is a nefesh hachyon, is the vital soul. He says the vital soul, that is the wick. That is what holds the fire onto and has the oil and the fire together. And how does that work? Ayedei kilyei nefesh habahamis, because it burns up. Did I skip a line?
Yep.
Sorry.
Shebeguf.
Sorry. Hanikras psila derech, which is called a wick. Just like in a physical candle. That the fire burns and exists through the burning of the wick. That becomes fire. Same thing is the Shechina needs nefesh elikis. They kill ye nefesh bahamis by burning up, by eating and consuming the godly soul, the animal soul. What are we saying here? You see, in order for the Shechina to come into this world, it has to engage something physical and burn it. The only thing that could burn, that the Shechina could burn, is the physical material world, because it's that which is the resistance to the fire that the fire attaches to. It's the resistance that the wick is not fire. Now, here's the problem. The oil is not fire either. The oil is actually not combustible. We talk about oil, we're not talking about kerosene, we're not talking about gasoline, we're talking about oil, like olive oil. Olive oil, you put a candle to it, nothing's going to happen. You can't burn it. So you can't now take fire, you can't take godliness and engage mitzvahs unless you have something which is the resistance, that which is different and unique, and that's the physical mitzvahs, the physical action, or the animal soul. The only thing that can engage the fire and become burnt is the animal soul itself, or the vital soul, and that's what the Shechina attaches itself to. I'm not talking about the Shechina here of the animal soul or the lower levels. We're talking about the Shechina of the godly soul. In order for the Shechina to come down to this world, it has to have the wick to attach itself that becomes, so to speak, the straw or the vehicle that the oil comes up to the fire to. How does the oil get burnt? It's really, the oil is not really getting burnt as much as getting, it's getting consumed, but it's keeping the wick from getting burnt. Take away the oil, the wick is gone in a second. It's the oil that allows the wick to keep burning and burning. So really the thing that keeps the fire here is the wick. Because take away the wick, there's no fire. Take away the oil, the wick burns up in a second. So what you really want to do is, how can we maintain the wick as long as possible? And that's with the oil. So the wick represents the person, the physical being. Comes out. In order for the Shechina to come down to this world, it has to be only through a material engagement. It has to be specifically engaged in the physical, and particularly in the animal soul, the godly soul, which is naturally resistant to godliness. Because only things that are resistant are what burns. Things that are not resistant to our conflict, for example, a rock in general doesn't burn. The only time a rock becomes a factor, if you have a volcano at a couple thousand or 100, I don't know what the temperature is, but tremendous temperature, then the rock becomes a factor. But in the world of fire, the things that are resistant it has to be burnt. They conflict with each other: wood, paper, wick, etc. These things get burnt, and they become the flame. They actually get transformed. one of the things in science, which I will tell you now, I don't know much science. One of the things I've heard many times from Hasidus teachers, that a rule in science is that energy is never used up, it's just transformed. Energy never goes away. So that fire that is burnt up of the wick doesn't really go away. It becomes holy. It's transformed to holiness. Meaning the ultimate thing to do is to transform, as we'll see in a moment, to transform the material into spiritual. That experience is not a favor to the godly soul. That's what makes not a favor to the animal soul, it's what makes the godly soul able to draw down godliness. Comes out in chapter 35, we started saying that the reason why we need to have the animal soul involvement in the mitzvahs, physical, is to benefit the animal soul. Here we're saying no. Nobody goes anywhere without the animal soul. Nobody can achieve anything. No one could bring down godliness without the animal soul, because only the animal soul could be the wick. The wick has to be something which is a conflict, which is resistance, and that does not exist within the godly soul. And this is what Moshe Rabbeinu told the Malachim up in heaven. You want the Torah? I'm sorry, you can't have it. Why not? You don't have an animal soul. That should be a good thing. I can study Torah without distractions. No, you can't. Because Torah's purpose is to draw down godliness, and if you don't have an animal soul, you can't do it. The animal, so this is the novel Chiddush number 1 of the end of the Tanya. The Alter Rebbe says, those people who struggle, those people who have a hard time with Yiddishkeit, now it's feeling challenged, I don't want to get up, I don't want to go, I have so many different interests. You are the one that the Torah is for. Because a person that has no conflict can't make a fire, can't draw down godliness. So the only one that can engage in the Torah and engage it in a way that's meaningful to the purpose of drawing down Shekhinah is the only a person that has an animal soul, which means that Tzaddik, as we'll see soon, he has a different journey, a different story. Why is the Alter Rebbe telling us this here now, after 51 and 52 and 53 in Tanya? Because he wanted to make another point. Until now, we saw the Shekhinah. What was the difference between Shekhinah, godliness, and something that wasn't godly? Was one thing. Is godliness revealed or is godliness hidden? In Shekhinah matters, godliness is revealed, and in material matters, godliness is concealed. I don't see godliness in a cup of tea unless I find a way to use it for a mitzvah, to use it for a class, which right now we'll do.
Very good.
That was a revealed godliness. That the purpose of this tea was to help out in the class. But after chapter 51, what did we explain? Shekhinah is not more godliness. Shekhinah is not a little more revealed godliness. Shekhinah is the brain, it's the neshama, it's the essence. Shekhinah is the essence of godliness, which means it's not a question of drawing down more light or less light. Is God being drawn down or not? Shekhinah is godliness. Shekhinah is the essence of Hashem. Now that we know that, we know this statement that only the godly soul can only succeed in bringing down the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah that really matters, the essence, is through the animal soul. It's a massive statement. Comes out that this statement here is telling us something important. A person who struggles with Yiddishkeit, a person who struggles with being frum or doing what's right, or having their interests that are pulling them one way to redirect it to something positive, to something holy, something which is kosher, that is not a fail. That is the ultimate purpose, and the way to bring down Shekhinah to this world is when you have the struggle of the animal soul and the godly soul, which is, by the way, the Rebbe's first mimer. The Rebbe's first mimer was, how do you bring down the Shekhinah? The Rebbe started the mimer, the first mimer that he said as Rebbe. Basi Lagani. He spoke about how originally the Shekhinah was down here, and then it went up through different sins. Then it came down through Moshe, all the leaders, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Levi, Kas, Amar, Moshe. Moshe was a 7th, brought down the Shekhinah, and the Shekhinah was back here, and then boom, they sin with the golden calf, back up. So what's our job? To bring the Shekhinah back down here. How do we do it? When you hold back, when you bend, when you go against the pull, the urge, the desire inside of you to do a sin, to do something selfish, do something for self reasons, only to go out of the self-centered world and go into God-centered world, that journey, that struggle is what brings the Shekhinah down, which means, the Alter Rebbe is finishing off Tanya, the only way to bring Shekhinah into the world, not just for the animal soul, but the godly soul too, is specifically through engaging the corporal, materialistic self, the part of us that is not natural, that which is conflict, that which is a holding back against godliness. And when that's transformed, that's when the Shekhinah comes down. It's specifically the opposite, as we'll see in the last 2 lines of Tanya here. He says it's the feminine which elicits from the masculine to make a hamshachah, to draw down something. Because if the feminine doesn't elicit something, if the lower doesn't do something to attract the masculine, to attract godliness, what's going to bring it down? So the starting point, what begins the fire, is the masculine, the physical world, or in our world, our most physical self, our most corporal self, the part of ourself that's materialistic and has interest in a good cheese Danish and a good, people laughing at our jokes versus someone else's jokes. That is the tool. When we change that, we break that, and we burn it up, that energy is not gone. It becomes godly, and that is the ultimate of bringing down the Shekhinah. Going back inside. Just as a note, there's a very interesting story that reminds us why there's not a conflict. The person might think, 1 second, yesterday I wasn't feeling so spiritual. Today I'm feeling spiritual. So could I really successfully draw down godliness today by overcoming a challenge? If yesterday I was struggling, I didn't win the battle, I fell. So now there's a very beautiful, really heavy story with the Chayz of Lublin, who I was fortunate to be at his gravesite in Poland. In Lublin, a very great Hasidic master, who's called the Chayz because he could see. Chayz means a seer. He could see things that the average person couldn't see. So somebody once came to him on Hanukkah, one of his Hasidim came to visit him, and there was another Hasid, another one of the Hasidim, who was going through a very difficult time. I'm not sure what it was. It was health related, or financial related, or spirit. I don't know what it was, some difficult time. So this Hasid decided he's going to write down the name of this person on a piece of paper, which reminds me, by the way, please, after the class, anyone online, anyone here, write down your name and your mother's name and text it to me. I'm going to send a note to the Rebbe that we finished this class, and they should have some nachas that we did some nice accomplishment. So I'll send that in today. So he writes the name of this chassid, and that he needs a blessing, and he hands it to the Chayz of Lublin in the early afternoon. The Chayz of Lublin takes it, looks at it, he says, "Feh, this guy, feh," and he throws the paper on the floor. Whoa, this is pretty serious stuff. But this guy's a chassid, and he knows I don't understand Rebbe's. You keep asking. If you don't get the answer you want, nudge a little bit. That night, after the chayzer, right before the chayzer lit the Hanukkah candles, the Hanukkah oil menorah, he wrote again the same thing, and he asked again a blessing for this guy. And the chayzer picks it up, and he goes, this guy, his light shines from one end of the world to the other. And he gives him a bracha. So later the chassid was sitting, he asked the chayzer, he said, "Could you explain this to me?" He said, "Very simple. In the afternoon, when you came over to me, he was sitting in a place of sin, doing something he shouldn't. Such a person was a disgrace to his purpose of creation. But later, when you came to me at night, he was sitting by his menorah, lighting the menorah. And the action of lighting the menorah, drawing down Shekhinah into this world, is unimaginable. In other words, a person, what's the power of that story? You might think the guy who did the sin in the afternoon in a place where he shouldn't be is a sham, he's a fake, he's a this. And by the way, the sin was engaged in was gambling. But the gambling houses in those days was considered really sinful because other things went on there too. But the gambling houses, that's where he was. He says he was sitting there at that moment. He was doing something detrimental to his neshama and to the purpose of creation. But that doesn't negate when 2 hours later he's lighting the menorah. So his animal soul won before, and now his godly soul. Meaning the power that when the Yid lights the menorah, when Yid lights the Shabbos candle, you may have this morning missed out this, and I didn't do that, and I missed brachas, and I forgot to say Shema, and I didn't do the. You know what? Work on yourself. At that moment, you can say feh. But the rest of the day, when you're doing what you should, you're actually creating the Shekhinah down here in this world, regardless of who you are. Because at that moment, that person, probably more than others, engage the Shekhinah. And it's more than that. Where do you see true nachas by a person is that which is the most unfathomable. That which, people are most fascinated by someone who juggles, because it's not natural to juggle. It's like so cool. You could do something unnatural. Most people could hold in their hand 2 things. You hold 4 things at once and juggle them. It's amazing. A parrot that talks. The Chassidus always talks. The talking parrot. What's so exciting? People talk much more clear. But parrots, it's a novelty. It's like a little boy who does something at the age of 2. All the parents are, wow, my son did this. And the 25-year-old did it. Well, nobody cares. Because that's not a novelty. It's not novelties. When down here in this world, when the animal soul could be rechanneled and re-engaged and transform that energy into godly, that is the most incredible inspiration. The Maya Nukvin, the lower world, eliciting by Hashem that demands a response in a tremendous way of drawing Shekhinah down. And that the godly soul can't do. Comes out from this part of Tanya, without going back to the beginning of Tanya, to the very beginning, that a Beilani can draw down godliness like no tzaddik can do it. No tzaddik can draw down godliness. That's why the angels can do it. Moshe said the angels, you can't have the Torah because you guys don't have an animal soul. It's a waste of time. You guys can't engage the lowest world. But if you remember, in the beginning of Tanya, we said, in chapters 3, we explained that we talked about the DNA of the neshama. The neshama, the soul, is made up of 10 powers. We explained that there's the chachma bina das, chesed gevurah the first. We explained all about the DNA of the soul, what you are, who you are. In chapter 4, in Perek Dalet, we explained what you do. And we explained that the interface that the neshama has with the world is machshava, dibur, ma'isa, thought, speech, and action.
Mhm.
And until now, we explained throughout the Tanya over and over that the Beinani can't really change who he is. He can only change what he does. Here, the Alter Rebbe is going to allude to it, even though it's hard to say if he says it clearly. He's alluding to maybe the Beinani could even change who he is. What are we saying? And you'll see this in the words here. One of the phenomenal discussions we had in chapter 35, 36, 37, 38, all those chapters was why action is so important, and then why intention is so important. Why we said first why action is the only thing that matters. Do the mitzvah. If you understand, you don't understand, do the mitzvah. Then we said, but you must have thought and feelings, because if not, it's like a body without a soul. So we explained that the feelings are the wings. It helps you carry the mitzvah to a place that can't go. So why do we say until now a Beinani or a regular person should have feelings? Because really those feelings lift up the mitzvah to a higher place. You could take it, we said, all the way to Yetzirah, maybe even to Bria. If you're really successful, take the mitzvahs really high places. The Alter Rebbe now is going to say a second novelty, that the truth is the kavanah has another purpose. When you're doing a mitzvah physically, you're engaging your mouth, your thought, which is really a physical part. Thinking is a physical interaction of chemistry of the brain, and your actions. But if you have feelings, it actually could affect even who you are. Eventually, if you feel something, it changes. If you could start feeling a mitzvah, you'll notice that after a while, that same behavior that maybe last week or last month or last year attracted you, no longer has an attraction, that you changed. You actually changed. The you through no different, or not no different, but similar to behavioral therapy. You will see that over time, if you control your thought, your speech, and your actions, not only what you do could change, but who you are could slowly change. And this goes back in chapter 14, we asked a question. The question was, if we already told the person before they're born, be a tzaddik, why do we say, and don't be a rasha? Okay, come on time and don't come late. Get 100 on your test and don't fail. I mean, for a parent who likes to overspeak, Mr. Alexander Henry Morgenstern, come here right now. You like to say extra. I can understand why you repeat yourself. But Hashem, why is he telling the neshama, be a tzaddik, don't be a rasha? And we answered there in chapter 14 that be a tzaddik. Oh, thank you. Be a tzaddik. Thank you. Delicious. Be a tzaddik applies to those people who can be a tzaddik. That means those people who can be a tzaddik. Those people who can't be a tzaddik, at least do a tzaddik. Don't be a rasha. Here he's saying, truth to be told, by working on yourself, you can transform even who you are. Another novel idea, which Tanya takes you at the end to another extended level of the power of the Beinani. Let's see the last 5-7 lines inside. And this is the point, by transforming the animal soul. Transforming from darkness to light and from bitter to sweet. Tzaddikim, which is usually the role of a tzaddik. Only the tzaddik do that usually. We said, what's a tzaddik do? What's the high tzaddikim? They could change, and even their animal soul, like it says by David HaMelech, it says, Kilibi chal bekirbi. I don't have an animal soul anymore. My left side is empty because I killed the animal soul. What is really he killed it? The animal soul is still there. He transformed it. He vanquished it. It's no longer an enemy. The guy used to be a drug dealer, now works for the police department catching drug dealers. The guy who used to be the troublemaker now is the biggest innovator helping you out because he was chained oversized. The tzaddik is the one that can take your animal soul and change it over. Don't be a chacham and think you can do it if you're a Beinani. But to a certain extent you could. But at least he says, or the pachis, ayidei kilya and levusheha, at least try and do the garments, your thought, shehem achshava, dibur no maisa, v'eshapchuschan, mi'cheshech haklipes leid Hashem ein sev baruchu. To go and transform what used to be the mouth that spoke things that were not appropriate, lashon hara, or things that were not nice, or the actions that you did, now have a complete transformation of self. By transforming yourself in a Beinani, and now all your actions, all your thoughts, and all your speech is only in the Torah and mitzvahs. This is the ultimate goal of a Jew. When a person transforms their animal soul and the garments of the animal soul, or the animal soul itself, as we said, through a lot of kavanah, you can actually start transforming your animal soul. You wake up the Mayan Nukvin, the feminine waters. Mayan Nukvin is a concept brought down that whenever you have a giver and receiver, The giver is called the male, masculine, and the receiver is called the female, the churin, masculine, nukvin. Remember nukvin. So basically, but the process is that the nukvin has to elicit the masculine. So when you transform the physical world, this elicits from Hashem lahamshech ein hashchina. He bechinas gili ein seif baruch hu. It draws down the shchina, which is the revelation of God's essence. Al nafshei elikis shebemeichin shebereishei. It's not just your animal soul that benefits, like we thought the whole Tanya until now. The Alter Rebbe says one more notch up. Even your godly soul will finally get to merit to feel the true Shechina, godliness in its truest form, when you do this. Because your animal soul is the only one that can tap into this thing. Your godly soul could feel spiritual, it could feel nice, it could feel good, it could feel holy, but it can't draw down the fire of the Shechina. That's only possible through the struggle. That's why a person only studies Torah and never engages the physical world. He's not bringing down the Shechina. It's staying right here. The Shechina staying upstairs. But to draw down the Shechina, you have to engage the physical, make that flame. And as the wick, as our animal soul, as our character starts burning and becoming consumed, it makes the flame stronger and stronger. And by the way, he says when you get your feelings in it, your kavana, the wick becomes even thicker. The wick becomes even stronger, and the fire becomes bigger. And this is what he says in the other place, what it says, Hashem, your God, is like a consuming fire, like it says in many, it's explained in many places. This last line of Tanya is a very profound line. The Alter Rebbe is saying not just, you see, a lot of people take this line and they're saying, watch out, don't mess with the Torah, it's a fire, you'll burn yourself. Don't touch it, don't mess around, it'll burn you. Here he says just the opposite. It's the most beautiful thing, that a fire can't exist without the wood. Hashem is telling you, I can't do what I want to do without you. Ki Hashem Elokecha eish uchla, I am Hashem your God, but I'm like a fire. I need to have you physically engaged for me to come down to this world. But there's one more detail Alter Rebbe says here. Ki Hashem Elokecha, it's Hashem your God. What does that mean? You want to make it personal? There's a very famous statement. Ze keli va'anevehu elokei avi v'rei menhu. This is my God, and I'll beautify him. The God of my fathers, I'll elevate him. If it's only the God of your fathers, it's not personal to you. I'm elevating him. God, he hangs in a picture on the wall. He stands, he's in heaven. God's somewhere above. He's high, very spiritual. You want to engage God? Don't make it the God of your fathers. Make it my God. Zek keli v'anevehu. I beautify him. He's part of my life. Elikecha costs. In a fire, it costs. Things are being gone. Things are disappearing. You want to engage the physical world. Sorry. You want to engage Hashem? You must be willing to sacrifice something. Time, effort, pleasures, personal interests. You have to be able to give. If you don't, like they say, no deposit, no return. In the words of Viktor Frankl's concept, the things that in the world really matter in life and really meaningful, it requires a sacrifice of some sort. To get to the deepest place, it requires sacrifice. He saw all the pain he went through, a vehicle to get him to a much greater place, because it takes an investment, a bend, a transformation of self to achieve the tremendous level of godliness they want to achieve. There's a story, we'll finish with the story of the Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe Rashab told a story once. There's a great famous painter. I actually looked him up who he was. Raphael lived in the 1400s, 1480s. He was a very great painter, and he painted many, many famous pictures. They once had on display somewhere not far from where the Rebbe Rashab lived, where he was traveling, 4 of his paintings. One of them was a very complex and beautiful painting. And the painting was like incredible, live. It was 2 fields, a wheat field and a barley field. And the wind was blowing, the sun was shining. And you had a turtle actually sitting on the side, sitting in the sun. You had a bunch of activities, ants, you had a bunch of activities going on in it. And everyone was coming to marvel at the incredible life and truth and feeling you had looking at this painting. Because the wheat barley was something that could be affected by the wind. You saw blowing a little more than the wind, and the barley was a little more stiffer. And the way you could see actually, you could see the turtle actually enjoying the sun. You saw everything going on, and everyone's talking, and artists are coming, and the incredible work of this Raphael. You can probably Google this painting. I don't know. It even had actually a bird standing on one of the wheat stalks, a little bird perched on it. And anyway, everyone's there, and the Rebbe Rashab says this one peasant, this one farmer comes in. He's looking at the painting and he starts laughing. He goes, maybe his expression was, "Nie pravda," it's not true. It's not a real painting. He says, maybe he said the painter's real. Raphael is a painter, but this painting is not real. It's not. It's wrong. It's not true. And everyone was telling him, "Be quiet. What do you know? You go back outside. You don't know." And he starts explaining to some of his friends, and everyone starts listening. And he explains, everyone knows that when a bird lands on a stalk of wheat, it bends a little bit. You can't possibly support the weight of a bird without bending. Otherwise, and he says if he would know that, he would have that stalk on a bit of a bend. The fact that it's not means he doesn't understand fully what's going on here. Rabbi Rashab said this particular painting and this story had a tremendous impact on his life. He says, based on the Baal Shem Tov, that everything you encounter, and he has many things that he shared and taught about this particular painting and the whole story. I think the Rashab visited the painting too, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know for sure. So what's the message that the Rebbe talks about, Chassidut talks about? If you want to be able to carry something, you have to be willing to bend. If you're not willing to have something burnt up, if you're not willing to have your wood burnt, you're not going to have a fire. If you're not willing to have your oil and your wick consumed, you're not going to have a candle. A Yiddishkeit, an engagement in Yiddishkeit requires a sacrifice, an investment. It doesn't mean pain. It doesn't mean sad. It doesn't mean that something's bad. It means that it's not free. It's not just without effort. The beauty and what elicits and what draws down, which is the whole Aveda of the Beinoni, is the effort that he does that draws down godliness. And this is how the Alter Rebbe completes the Tanya, that it's Ki Hashem Aleikecha. If you want it to be your God, you have to be ready to have something consumed. Be ready to give up something. I gave up my lunch break to go learn with somebody. I gave up my time to go put tefillin, to visit somebody. If you're not giving up yourself, in what's your investment? What's your investment in Yiddishkeit that makes it your God versus the God of your fathers? With this, we complete Nishlam Chelik Rishon Bez Hashem Yisparach V'Yisala. We complete the first section of Tanya, and with this, we say L'chaim, that Hashem should bless us. That some of what we learned should permeate us and create a change within ourselves, both in our actions and in our inner self. And this should draw down the actual Shekhinah itself, the light itself, Mashiach, both our personal Mashiach and our big Mashiach today. L'chaim. Now, next week, we'll have a little L'chaim, we'll have some refreshments. Next week, we have a special guest. We have Dini's aunt from South Africa, who's going to be in the area. She's going to come and give a talk on Tanya to this group, and anyone else can join us. Wow. We'll advertise it. And then we'll begin the following week. Same time, yeah. Perfect. And then the following week, that'll be like a little celebration. The following week, we're going to begin the new section, most probably Sha'ar Yichud V'Emunah. We'll go in order, which is the next page, which is a very, very advanced and exciting way of how to have faith and what faith in God really means. So it's a pretty intense and beautiful study. Right now, I want to thank everybody for coming and being patient with our learning. Sometimes I understand more when I'm explaining and sometimes less, but it was a very good learning experience for me. It was probably the greatest gift that I got in the last 6 years in the realm of spirituality was this class, because it helped me and made me study Tanya a little more intense, a lot more intense than I ever did. And it was a really meaningful and very enjoyable experience. So l'chaim, and those who are home could take a piece of cake and something to enjoy the celebration. And those who are here we have cake, 2 cakes,